God's opened the door for me to be able to share the gospel with over 2,000 celebrities. It doesn't matter if your platform is 10,000, 10, or 1. God's given you a platform for a specific reason, for a specific person. And if it's just for one person, isn't that one person worth it all?
Jesse with Church Leaders. We're here with Dylan Novak. Dylan, you're a youth pastor. Let me make sure that I got this right in Rogersville,
That's it.
Tennessee. Is that
Yep.
correct? Okay, cool. And you also started a ministry years ago called Celebrity Evangelist, where you travel around to different conventions, concerts, different things, where you make your way in somehow, some way to these celebs, and you give them the gospel. So that's what we want to talk about that today. Some of the stories, the people you've talked to. One of them, first question: what inspired you first to kind of like start sharing the gospel with celebrities? Like that's kind of a, not everybody does that. What inspired you to go around to these places and start doing so?
So I am a huge superhero pop culture nerd, and I still am. Uh, I wanted to cry at the new Superman movie that came out. I was like, "Oh, this is beautiful. This is the Superman we've been wanting." But I talked my parents into taking me to this Comic Con in Knoxville, Tennessee. At the time, we lived in Virginia, and there were a lot of celebrities going to be there. Margot Kidder, who played Lois Lane, was one of them. Read an interview, watched an interview where she stated she was an atheist. And as a 13-year-old, I felt like I'd been punched in the gut, because that's when the reality hit me that she is a soul, just like you, just like me, who's on her way to heaven or hell. And I knew without a doubt that she was on her way to hell because she didn't know Jesus as her personal Lord and Savior. And so I prayed, God, please send somebody to tell her about Jesus before it's eternally too late. And God really convicted my heart. What about you? You're going to be right there in front of her. And so I played Jonah for a few days, and then I'm like, all right, God, I'll take some tracks from my church and I'll go down there. Everybody was receptive, including Margot. And that's kind of how it was for about 7 years. I would go to these autograph shows. I would wait at a backstage door of an artist that I was going to meet, and I'd give him a tract as I got an autograph, as I got a photo from him. And in 2015, we're coming up on the 10-year anniversary of this to the day. There was an opportunity to try to meet James Taylor. He was doing some arena shows,
Mm-hmm.
and a friend of mine really challenged me. Why aren't you going to go try to give him a tract or give him some gospel material? The truth of the matter was, I wasn't a big enough fan to go to the trouble. That's what it was. And but then I read an interview of him in Rolling Stone, 1991, where he said, I was raised by atheist parents. I'm agnostic, but I would be open to listen to somebody if they were to take the time to show me. And I remember I'm just sitting there reading that Rolling Stone interview, and I'm like, oh my goodness, that's such an open door. If my neighbor down the road would say something like that, we'd be tearing their doors down. Why aren't people tearing down, walls to try to get to James? He's
Yeah,
obviously open. And
yeah.
so I remember telling my mom, I said, I wish I could say this, this, and this to him. I just don't know if I'll have the time. And she said, well, why don't you write him a letter? So that's how that began. Every celebrity that I share the gospel with, I give them a handwritten letter explaining the gospel based off questions they've asked, things they've said, the best presented gospel to their mindset. And
Mm.
so it took 3 days. I missed him a couple times. Don't know how to this day. Finally met up with him in Greensboro, North Carolina, which is appropriate. He had Carolina on his mind. But I got to talk with him for about half an hour outside his tour bus. And he said, that interview was almost 25 years ago. You're the first person to come to me directly to tell me something. He gave me a hug. And I
Wow.
remember driving home with the greatest joy in my heart. Because for the longest time, for those 7 years, I got saved when I was 8 years old, but I kept wrestling with what I wanted to do. And that never works with God. We read through the Bible, literally, if you get into a wrestling match with God, you will lose. And that night I said, all right, God, whatever it is you want me to do, I'll do it. You want me to be a preacher, evangelist, missionary, just open the doors, show me that I'm doing the right thing and I'm not wasting my time. And since then, God's opened the door for me to be able to share the gospel with over 2,000 celebrities. Some of the doors he's opened, some of the conversations are truly unbelievable. And at the time, I remember thinking, I'm in Southwest Virginia. I'm not in Hollywood. I'm not in Los Angeles. I'm not in New York City, Atlanta, or even a big city. God, how's this going to work? And for like the first few years, everything was within a 6 hour radius. And the good thing about that is it's not in the hustle and bustle of these big cities a lot of times, and I'm able to have more of a conversation with somebody than say I've
Mm,
gone to New York and LA to meet people before, but a lot of times it is very rushed, it's very quick. Again, not saying that God can't use that, because we don't always know this side of
yeah.
heaven, but it's so nice to be able to actually talk with somebody without chaos around you. And it's a testament in itself of how God will place you exactly where he wants you to be.
Wow. That's super cool. And so 2,000 celebrities, give me, we'll say, the most memorable kind of experience over that time. Like, what's one that
Ooh.
sticks out? You're like, oh my goodness.
I'm
There's probably a lot,
yeah.
but give me one or
Okay,
two.
so the best one is Jerry Lee Lewis. There's a whole long story I'm not going to get into for time's sake, but he had said he wakes up every night worried he's going to wake up in hell, and I got to have a very intimate conversation with him after what ended up being his final concert, and he
Wow.
admitted to me right there that he was not ready to die, and he ended up having to hurry and leave. He was afraid he was going to miss his flight. He was pushing it, and I said, well, my contact information's in the material. If you need to reach out to me, at any time, you've got that info. And a week later, I got a letter that was dated 2 days later letting me know he had accepted Christ. So that is my favorite story. um Earlier this year, Bill Murray, I had people literally messaging me saying, don't go, don't waste your time. He's going to absolutely flip out. And it ended with him. Um, I presented the material to him and then saw him leave the event like 15 minutes later. And he was holding the Bible, he was holding the gift material, and he came over to where I was. He said, I just want you to know this is probably the most special gift and thoughtful gift I've gotten in years. And I'm trying to not cry looking at this. Thank you so much. Um, there was an
Wow.
instance where I went to Nashville earlier this year to try to witness to this one famous actress who is known to be a pain to deal with. I didn't know why I felt led to go. And she did end up being the pain that I was afraid she would be. Completely ignored the whole two people waiting. And I was driving home thinking, well, this trip was for nothing. And then I got a call from a friend of mine saying, hey, Post Malone's at this restaurant and bar downtown. You need to turn around right now. Turned around, and at 4 in the morning in an alleyway in Nashville, had a great gospel conversation with Post Malone. And he was so sweet. And he was like, I used to be very closed off to all of this. But as I've gotten older, I've got a kid now. I'm like, well, I should maybe look into this. What is
Hmm.
there a little bit more? So those are just a few off the top of my head.
That's really cool. Yeah, seeing a conversation where you had planned, but God had other
Yeah.
plans, and
And,
and
and,
He
and I've
brought somebody else. That's
I've
really
seen
cool.
that happen several times. Like there's this one celebrity who his name's Doug Bradley. He calls himself an evangelical atheist, which is really sad. And he lectured me for about half an hour and held up the whole line. He kept involving the crowd in the line. His management kept being like, hey, come on, let's move the line. He's like, no, 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 I'm going to say what I want to say, and then I'm going to give him a chance. And I will say this, he was respectful and listened to me just like I listened to him. But he took the material. He said, I'll look at it. I'm always open to comedy material. If I change my mind, I'll let you know, but don't wait by the phone. Well, I'm walking away going, well,
Mm.
that was for nothing. But this young man stepped out of line and he said, hey, do you have any more of that material that you were talking about? I said, yeah, and I always carry extras with me. Talked with him for a moment, and he said, is your contact info on this stuff? I said, yeah. Okay, cool, thanks. Didn't hear back from him for a month, and then he messaged me on Instagram and said, "Just want to let you know, I'm a former atheist. I was an atheist when you met me. I was cheering Doug on, and then a few things you had said, I was like, well, maybe I should look into that." He said, "I just want to let you know I got saved today." And then the last time I checked on him, he was a
Oh, praise
worship
God.
leader in North Carolina now. So again, I say that as an encouragement to the church. Just because what you think the plan is, that doesn't mean that's God's plan. Sometimes God just wants to
Mm.
test you and just see if you're going to be faithful even in the bad without you even knowing there's somebody around the corner listening to every word. And we may not always know this
Yeah.
side of heaven, because for example, if I did not have my contact info in there, I could still be here 5 years later going, well, that was a waste of time, not knowing that it was for that young man in line.
Right, right. That's great, man. Thanks for sharing that. That's huge. That's a huge encouragement. You kind of mentioned some. I've got to ask this, because I'm sure there's a lot of people out there listening to this, reading this, and they're going to be like, "Oh man, there's probably a lot of people that you come in contact with, especially in the celeb world, because obviously we see the quick hits,
Right.
right? The Grammy, speeches, the just the little snippets that probably a lot of people are thinking, "Oh, Dylan probably gets shut down more than not." Is that true? Do you find more people kind of receptive, or a lot of people like, don't give me that Jesus stuff?
Very rarely is somebody completely shut down. Now, keep in mind, I have a list on my phone of different opportunities, different events that I can travel to, go to, and I try to always be very prayerful every decision. Again, not saying that just because I feel led to go for somebody that means it's going to be a success. That's not the case always, but more times than not, people are open. I'll say this, that people oftentimes, like you said, they'll look at the Grammys, they'll look at the Oscars and be like, oh, these people are all evil Hollywood. They're sold out to the devil. That's not everybody. There are some, and I will be the first to tell you there is a lot of evil in Hollywood. There's also a lot of evil in churches. There's also a lot of evil in any form of industry, business, ministry. That doesn't mean we should write everybody off. One quote from an actor I think can really change a lot of people's minds. His name's Matthew Lillard. You may know him from
Hmm.
Scream, Scooby Doo. Met him the same day as Doug Bradley, and he said, "I'm so glad you didn't meet me 10, 15 years ago." And I said, "Why is that?" He said, "Because I was a butthole." And
Hmm.
he said, "I
Hmm.
thought I was God." He said, I would have literally looked at you and said, I don't need this. I'm God. I'm powerful. I've got everything. I've got the world at my fingertips. And he said, I have been humbled. I have a family. And I realize I was a jerk. And I realize I need this now. And I think that is
Wow.
where, because a lot of times, more so in the past, but I've had a lot of people be like, well, why don't you chase some of these younger celebrities? I do. I do a lot of times. Just in recent years, I've had an opportunity like Post Malone. He's young, which is
Hmm.
bizarre. You look at our photo, he looks like my dad, and I'm older than him. That just weirds me out. But one of my youth students actually said, where Post is holding the gift bag, he said, it, it looks like the divorced dad visiting his son on the weekend with a present. I was like, dude. And now I look at the picture and I can't unsee it. But no, I think a lot of times God has opened the door for some of these older celebrities because they have had the taste of the world. Like
Yeah.
Jim Carrey's been famously quoted saying, "I wish everybody could be rich, successful, and famous for 1 minute, just to realize that's not going to bring them happiness." And I
Hmm.
think a lot of times the people that do pursue entertainment, they pursue fame, I believe a lot of times they have to realize they're still going to be empty, like the woman at the well, and realize that if I continue in this, I'm going to just want more. But if I give my life to Christ, I will be eternally satisfied. I will forever have
Yeah.
everything that I need. And
Yeah.
I do feel like that's one of the reasons why I've been able to reach a lot of the older crowd. And again, to the people who are watching the Grammys and stuff and making assumptions, again, there is a lot of evil, but there's a lot of sweet people that are just kind of stuck in the middle of everything. Who they're just trying to find their way. Like Billie Eilish is, I've not gotten to meet her. I would love to. My wife and I tried last year in New York and we missed her. But she's been quoted. She said, I'll read my comments on Instagram and Christians are mean. I'm trying to figure out what's true and y'all are saying I worship the devil and I don't. And I do think like I said, a lot of people we're quick to make that assumption about different people
Yeah.
when we need to just stop and go, ultimately at the end of the day, no matter if they are evil, if they are lost, whatever, they're a soul that God created that needs to find their way back to him.
Yeah, yeah, and you made the point, like, when before you go and do this stuff, prayer is
Yes.
what guides you. Obviously, you bathe this in prayer, so God is setting those appointments up, and sometimes not yet. The not yet's up, and kind of like maybe in the Matthew Lillard situation, you get a lot of those where it's like, oh, I'd really like to go see this
Right.
person, but it doesn't work out, and God's the one, or obviously sovereign over that and ordaining that.
Exactly.
So it's a great point. Well, I want to ask you this because Ozzy Osbourne just passed. I know that I've seen your post. I just wrote about it yesterday, of your interaction that you got to sit down with the Osbournes for a brief period of time, share the gospel with them, actually give Ozzy a
Yeah.
Bible with his name on it. I just wanted you to kind of take a little moment, share a little bit about that story, what that interaction was like, and what it was like talking to Ozzy about God. Somebody, honestly, that a lot of people look at and it's like, oh man, this guy was like literally going to
Right.
hell because of the things that he did, and this guy definitely worships Satan's. Obviously, you know, being the godfather of metal and what he did, and being Black Sabbath. Obviously those things. Obviously, you as a Christian, you're like, oh, this guy's got to be evil. There's no way he wants to bring Jesus. It's like a vampire, type of a deal.
Right.
It's like, oh man. But I want you to share, what was your interaction like?
I'll say this just up front. He was so sweet. Again, I will tell you, I've met a lot of people who I will tell you are not sweet, who are not nice or good people. Ozzy was a very sweet man, and his family, you could tell they were just a very close family. So he did, to my knowledge, I don't want to be quoted exactly and mess this up. To my knowledge, this was his one and only autograph signing in the United States in like a convention setting. He would do CD signings through the years, but in recent years, a lot of bigger name celebrities have done these comic cons and stuff. Well, he got announced to do this horror convention up in outside of Philadelphia.
Okay.
The problem was I was supposed to be preaching at a missions conference in Missouri that day, and I was like, "Oh no!" And again, a lot of prayer goes into this. Ozzy was somebody I've always been praying for. Again, I'm a classic rock fan. I love music. I've heard his songs for years. Miracle Man, which is a mockery of Jimmy Swaggart because Jimmy openly mocked Ozzy, and then all the scandal with him came out. It was a very fair trade, in my opinion. But again, that's the image
Yeah.
of Christianity that people have seen. And then, of course, Black Sabbath has a song called After Forever. And even though Geezer Butler wrote that song, which be praying, I'm going to get to see Geezer in September. Um, it's like these are still lyrics that are defining this person and where they stand in life spiritually. And so I was like, I really do feel I need to take this opportunity. Like it was a pretty quick decision. You had to act on it fast because it was going to sell out. You had to pre-purchase everything. And I'll forever be thankful to the pastor in Missouri for he was so awesome. He's like, we're going to reschedule you for the beginning of the week at this missions conference. I mean, he moved everything around. My family was
Wow.
amazing to move everything around because what we literally drove two separate cars halfway to Missouri, left my car at the Nashville airport, drove the rest of the way to Missouri, did the missions conference, spent the night, turned around, drove back to Nashville. My wife and daughter drove home, and I'm there in Nashville, flew from Nashville to Philly. And again, it's just so funny. I battle a very cynical mindset sometimes. I'm like, Lord, if he's not receptive, I'm going to be really upset. But again, I'm just like, I know this is for something. And
Yeah.
so Ozzy had said in an interview with The Guardian, it was in 2014. He considers himself a Christian more than anything, which again, saying I'm a Christian is a very surface level thing. I don't just take that, and I don't think you do either.
Yeah.
He said, I would love to, and again, you can find this interview online. He said, I have a hard time reading the Bible. It's written in a language I don't understand, Old English, Shakespeare. And I was like, I know exactly what
Hmm.
he means. So I got him a New Believer's Bible, an NLT, large print, got his name put on the cover because now we put people's names on every Bible. And we do that through people sponsoring Bibles. That's the only way we're able to afford it. And I'm so thankful for people doing that because it's opened the door to really be like, this gift is just for you. Like it, I mean, it's branded for you. And it's just it's an additional personal touch. So anyway, I did do that for Ozzy even before the sponsorship because I think Ozzy would appreciate that. Well, went to the event, and if anybody's watching this has been to a Comic Con, they know a lot of times they will rush people through. It is a cattle call, and that's where the letter and everything is so important because you don't have time to be like, hey, if you were to die today, do you know where you would spend eternity? It's not going to really happen that way with a lot of the bigger names. Sometimes it is, but it's
Yeah.
not always. Um, Ozzy was very, very relaxed. So they did start to rush at the beginning of the line, and then he put his foot down. He said, "I actually want to meet people. Don't rush people." And they told him, "You're going to be here a lot longer if we don't do this." And he's like, "I don't care." That man didn't leave till after 2 in the morning, and that event was supposed to be over at 9. Five
Oh, wow.
hours. Ozzy cared about his fans. He was a good guy, in that regard. So got to shake his hand. I said, it's an honor to meet you. Thank you so much for all the great memories through the years, from the Osbournes to your music being the soundtrack for so many people's lives. And I told him the reason I came to meet you today is because I love and care about you and your soul. And he's sitting there. The same chair that everybody has seen in the final performance. That's the chair he was sitting in at this event. And he's like, oh, and he's such a sweet man. And I said, I wanted to, I got this gift and I'd like to show it to you. He's like, yeah, show it to me. Again, not rushed at all. Um, and I quoted that interview to him, and he's like, yeah, I remember saying that. And I said, well, I got you this. And he goes, well, I still won't be able to understand it just because it has and I said, no, no, no. And I showed him. He immediately turned to the Gospels of Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. And he starts, like, I'll forever pick on my buddy that was standing to the left. I'm like, why did you not take a picture of him thumbing through the Bible? But he's thumbing through it, and he goes, I can understand this. I mean, just genuine excitement in his face. And then he turned it over and goes, you actually got my name on it. And oh, thank you from the bottom of my heart. Thank you so much. You're so welcome. And even his people are like, well, this is really special. I was like, and I got you this other stuff too. I said, I don't want to be rude and hold up the line. You can look at this in your own time. I said, but I had to get this to you. We talked for another few moments. Then
Hmm.
I went and met the rest of the Osborne family, and they were all very kind as well. Jack and I had a really in-depth conversation for a long, long time about just spirituality, and he even made the comment. He said, "Thank you for not thinking my dad's just evil." I said, "I can tell it's a brand."
Oh,
He,
wow.
he said, "He said it is."
Wow.
He said it's a brand, and he mastered the brand. He is the most lovable, sweet person. He said the people that look like angels are the true demons. I'm like, I
Mm,
am not going to disagree with you there. Jesus even said that you come in whitewashed tombs. But so
mm,
anyway, I
mm.
thought that this side of heaven, that was all I was going to know. Well, 2 weeks later, I'm in Kentucky at another event. Jack was also there. And I remember telling my wife, I would like to follow up with him because like Jack was like, hey, I want you to listen to this podcast. This is kind of what I've been looking into. And we exchanged a lot of information of different things. He said, write down some stuff for me to listen to and I'll do the same. And I was like, my only fear, and this is just our humanness, and it comes with anybody sharing the gospel. I don't want him to feel like I'm just shoving my beliefs down his throat and just stalking him because I'm
Mhm.
like, literally, this is your next event. I don't want him to be like, okay, dude, chill. And we know how people can be like that. So I was like, Lord,
Yeah.
just give me peace what I should do. He approached me. So I was standing off to the side, and he taps me on the shoulder and he said, hey, and his booth was over this way. He said, "Can I ask you a really silly question?" I said, "Sure." And again, it's not uncommon for a celebrity to be like, "Hey, where's the bathroom?" at one of these things. And I said, yeah. He said, were you in Philly last week? I said, I was, or 2 weeks ago. I said, I was. He said, I thought I recognized your jacket, and it was the Danny Goki Love God, Love People jacket. And he
Oh yeah. Hmm.
said, you're the one who gave my dad the Bible, right? I said, yeah, that was me. He said, I got to tell you, you have no idea how much he loved that thing. I said, really? And I was like, come on. And he said, so that night, he said, first of all, my dad gets a lot of gifts. Not many of them make it home. Not because he's unappreciative, but just because we just don't have room for it. Like, it's random knickknacks. Like,
Right.
this is just a funny side comment. When my wife and I were in New York last year, we met Steve Carell on Broadway. And this one lady, and I've got it on video, she is like over the top screaming, I got you an owl keychain, which I'm a huge Steve Carell fan. And I'm like, is there a significance to this in a movie that I'm not remembering? And Steve was like, oh, okay. And he never took it. And she's like, you forgot your owl keychain. He's like, I didn't forget it. He just kept ignoring it. And I completely get that. And
Yeah.
so anyway, he said a lot of gifts don't make it home. Not only did your gift make it home, it made it to his room that night. Because he said we were helping dad get in the elevator because it was at this casino, and the suite was upstairs. All the
Hmm.
autograph stuff was downstairs. And he said, we stopped at the elevator, and dad said, where's my Bible? And he said, you can imagine the shock on people's faces. Like, did the Prince of Darkness just say, where's my Bible? And he said, I was confused at first. I was like, Dad, what? My Bible. Somebody got me a Bible with my name on the cover. Oh, it's probably in your autograph room. We'll get it tomorrow. No, I have tomorrow off. I want to look at it tomorrow. Well, we'll get it sometime tomorrow. Well, then it'll be halfway through the day. I want it now. And he said, he just pitched a fit. I'm not going upstairs until you get my Bible. He
Wow.
said, so we went back in there, unlocked the rooms, got the Bible, and brought it to him. And he goes, there was other stuff too. There was a letter and other things. Go get it. He said it's just better to not argue. So we go back and we got it for him. And he's like, and I'm like, there, Dad, are you happy? I am now. He said we took him to his room. He said, and then the next day at lunch, he said we all had our separate rooms. And he said it got brought up at lunch. And he was like, did you all see this? And he said, we all started, yeah, we all got something similar. And he said, Mom was talking about it. Kelly was talking about it. He said, I don't know for everybody else. He said, I read everyone's letter. He said, it meant so much that you individually wrote us a letter. I also loved it wasn't just copy and pasted. Like, you addressed things
Mm.
I've said. You've addressed things Mom said, Kelly said, Dad said. He said, that was really special to me too. And he said, and I just want you to know that had a greater impact on my dad than you know. He said, so much so that he said
Wow.
people have been coming by the house just asking, hey, how'd the convention go? And he said, my dad, the first thing he tells anybody that comes in the house, Sharon, go get my Bible. And he said it's on his bedside table. And he said he has been looking at it. He's showing everybody that comes by. And I was like, that is just the most encouraging,
Wow.
incredible feedback that, again, so many Christians would write off Ozzy. And again, there's a time in my life I would have been like that too. But we have to remember that everybody is worthy of hearing the gospel because we're
Yeah.
all
It's good.
sinners. God sees us of one of two ways: saved, not saved, born again, or lost. And we have to
Yeah.
take our platform, use our platform, and try to tell as many people as we can before it's eternally too late.
That's great. Now, thanks for sharing that story. That is super encouraging. Dylan, as we close, I want you to encourage. What encouragement would you give Christians out there regarding the importance of sharing the gospel?
Well, I'll say this. Think back in your life. Who was the first person that shared the gospel with you? And just think of how important and how pivotal that is to you. Because even if you didn't get saved that day, that's when the first seed was planted that you remember, and everything started festering in your heart. And just imagine that you can be that for somebody. I a lot of times when I preach at churches, share the ministry, I'll give this challenge, and I'll give this challenge here. You're probably thinking of somebody in your life that isn't saved, who doesn't know Christ. I know I'm thinking of that person right now in my life. And my challenge is, as you hear this, in the next 72 hours, do something to share the gospel with that person. Statistics say if you say you're going to do something, you don't do it within 3 days, you're probably never going to do it. And that can be by inviting them to church, giving them a gospel tract, just bringing up Jesus. But if nothing else, just lay a tract, just something. And I was at this church in Cincinnati. This is just so encouraging to all believers. A 7-year-old little girl came up to me. She said, "I'm going to do that challenge. I'm going to tell my neighbor Ginger about Jesus tomorrow after school." I got a message the next day from the little girl's mom. Ginger was their 80-year-old neighbor. I was thinking that was a little girl on the playground. And this little girl went home, got a Bible, wrote her a note, included a come to church with me card from her church, took it to Ginger's house. Ginger started crying. And the mom said she brought up, "I started thinking about what's going to happen to me when I die yesterday." And I thought, I don't know. And she said, and I cried out, "God, if you're there, please send somebody to tell me about Jesus." And that's when God laid her on that little girl's heart. And that day, Ginger came to know and accept Christ as her Lord and Savior. And as far as I know, started going to church with the little girl. And I'm like, a
Wow.
lot of us as Christians, and I'm guilty of this as well. It's like, well, I I'm not getting on top of these platforms like Greg Laurie or Billy Graham, and I don't have that it doesn't matter if your platform is 10,000, 10, or 1. God's given you a platform for a specific reason, for a specific person. And if it's just for one person, isn't that one person worth it all? And so my encouragement
Yeah.
is don't wait until you're reading someone's obituary. Every time a celebrity passes away, especially, I get messages, "Did you share the gospel with this person?" The ones that break my heart the most is I've gotten messages, people saying, "Not this didn't happen with Ozzy. This has happened in the past," where they're like, "I'm saying a prayer for this person right now." I'm like, it's too late. The time to pray, the time to do
Mm.
something with sharing the gospel is while that person is still on this earth, still breathing, and has an opportunity to accept
Yep.
Christ. And it should just be an encouragement
Yes.
to us to go, don't wait until it's too late, because right now, the next time you see your friend may be the last time you ever see them. That might be the last
That's good.
opportunity you have.
Yes. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. I don't want to end without you kind of sharing how people can help you. How can they get involved? Um, Obviously, be praying, but where can they go? I know that you said, "Hey, people without donations, you wouldn't be able to do
Mhm.
some of this." How can they get involved?
So, you can follow my social media pages on Facebook or Instagram. It is Celebrity Evangelist. I'm more active on Instagram. Just to clarify, I'm not calling myself a celebrity. I should have probably called it Celebrity Evangelist Ministries, but we're 10 years in. It is what it is. Um, I've gotten those messages. Someone like, "Who do you think you are?" I'm like, I'm literally, let me quote Mark Hall, "I'm just a nobody. I'm not claiming to be anything." It's just an easy, quick grab for somebody to know what to type in. But yeah, Celebrity Evangelist on Facebook, Instagram. If you would like to sponsor a Bible for one of these celebrities, you can go on my website, celebrityevangelist.org. All Bibles are $35. It's a very reasonable price, and that's a nice
Mhm.
large print Bible with the person's name on it. You'll get a shout out on our social media. Thank you for sponsoring this, because again, that is something that's been on my wife's heart, especially for years. And I just told her, I said, we can't afford that with the ministry. There's no way we can, but because of people sponsoring, it's become possible. Like when I went to Los Angeles last month, my it cost over $1,000 just for the Bibles. Trust me, Mardell Christian Bookstore is pretty happy to see me walk in the door. But again, it wouldn't be possible without people. And those, besides just, there's also a place you can just make a general donation that goes towards travel cost out of state, that kind of thing. But if somebody's like, I would like to get something in return, there's this really cool thing we do. It's on the website, Join the Mission. You'll see the Bible sponsorship, but underneath that, we go to a lot of Comic Cons. Like a lot of this stuff is on the street, but there's also a lot of opportunities at Comic Cons. Now that costs X amount of fee each celebrity. Like it's not just you pay to get in the convention
Yep.
door. I'll be in Chicago in a couple weeks. Brendan Fraser's a different price than John Cena, so on and so forth. So we will put that opportunity and that price on our website, and that allows us to be able to walk up to that person, share the gospel with them, and then you will get the autograph. So, and it can be personalized to that, to whoever if they want it. They can choose the photo as long as there's a photo option. And not just that, I will email, text, whatever best form of contact is, and be like, hey, we're in line, be praying. Hey, we just got out of line. Here's how it went. Just a little bit of behind the scenes information. And again,
Yeah.
if it weren't for that, we couldn't do this because just 2 weeks ago in
Yeah.
Knoxville, we were able to witness to, I think it was 20 people. And I know I just totaled it up yesterday. Everything was over $2,500, which we would not have been
Wow.
able to afford that. But because of people saying, hey, I
Yeah.
believe in this ministry, I want to help Alan Covert from The Wedding Singer get the gospel. It's like, great. Here is an autographed 8x10 from Alan's table. He even wrote, they were cones. And, so that's just a great way for people to be like, I was a part of this. I got something in return. And this is how this person was able to get the gospel.
Yeah. Oh, that's great, man. No, that's cool. I didn't even know all that
Yeah.
stuff. So that's awesome. And I wanted to point out too, like when you talked to Ozzy, if I'm correct, that was just a couple of
That
years
was
ago.
October.
Am
That
I
was
right in
October
saying that?
2023.
So think about, and I want to point this out, like putting the name on a Bible was something that probably really impacted
Mhm.
Ozzy. Obviously, he said that he wanted it. He's like, "Oh, that was mine. I want to make sure that I've got that." And so, doing what you're doing and just being personal to these people. A couple years ago, and Ozzy just passed yesterday, or yeah, yesterday, and wow, who knows?
Right.
Who knows the impact? Who knows what was done? But we do know that he heard the gospel and he read the scriptures. We do know
Yes.
that from Jack's testimony. So yeah, just to point that out, like what you're doing is having a major impact, and the gospel is going out in some of these areas that, like you say, there's a lot of darkness that's surrounding this, a lot of demonic activity that is trying to ward off and block some of that. And so just praise, I thank you for what you're doing and submitting to the call.
Yeah.
You're like, oh, I don't know if I want to do this, but you're in, I love it, and I thank you. It's been an honor. Thank you for talking to me
Absolutely. Thank you
and
for
sharing the
having me,
stories
Jesse.
that
I
you did.
appreciate
Yeah,
it.